So the starting point to know more about generative AI for someone who may or may not have a tech background, but if you have a tech background, I would there are tons of courses available. I would actually start with the course we're offering. It's a really condensed 1 hour course that I think you'll find really useful and available. And we are looking at potentially putting in a much longer kind of 8 module course. One of the things that you want to focus on right now is proper prompting. People are going on Gen AI applications and using it more like Google, and proper prompting and learning how to do a proper prompt will drastically improve your results from Gen AI and will absolutely reduce hallucination and some of the other challenges. So it's very important to learn how to properly prompt, so I'd recommend that. And yes, the link, as I mentioned, the link for the course will absolutely be provided right after the webinar, so feel free. So we'll talk a little bit more. I have a few questions in the Q&A, so a little bit more about the copyright issue. You'll actually see now, if you were to Google or look at some of the issues that are coming up, companies like OpenAI and so on. So generative AI is not a traditional software program. So if you know anything about computer science and programming, where you write in a programming language and you create kind of, if this happens, then do this. I'm drastically oversimplifying, but there is a program where it's meant to deliver a result as different things happen. Like think flowchart. If you used to take early computer science courses, you'd be taught how to do programming in a flowchart before you started the actual programming language training to get the logic of how do you solve a problem. And then you could write a software solution to solve that problem. Generative AI is very different. And what happened is they actually just loaded as much content, as much data, as much information, as many articles, as many videos, as many pictures as they could possibly get their hands on into the large language model. And the large language model, I'm again drastically oversimplifying. If there's anybody that's from an AI background here, they'll think that I'm super oversimplifying. But just to keep it very high level, it basically has created, you could think of it almost like a filter where you pass in a question and it has actually created trillions and trillions of connections between all the data, so it can actually predict the next best word that it should be creating in a sentence, and then it will actually generate text or how an image should look if you ask for a certain image, because it's had so many images or so much text. So what's really important to understand is it's not a software solution at all in the traditional sense. And this is why they say often generative AI is a black box, because we don't fully understand actually how it's getting to the answer, because it's the connections in the networks between all of the data and content that's been loaded. So the companies that have been training large language models need a tremendous amount of data. And so they've taken a lot of data that may still be under copyright, and they've actually used it. And there's still legal precedent to be said about whether that is going to be okay or not. So there's going to be a lot of larger legal battles around the content that was used to train the models and whether they had the rights to use it as training content. So that's kind of where a lot of the IP issues are going to come from. The next question, what is the first introduction, or what was the first introduction of Gen AI, and in what use, at work or personal? So for me, was very interested. I follow technology developments very closely, and so I used ChatGPT very early once it was released. Been following generative AI. I typically travel to a number of large technology conferences around the world each year, and so I've been watching kind of the progression towards generative AI. I was actually in Lisbon at a large technology conference called Web Summit when generative AI was released by OpenAI, or the first version made publicly available. And so that was kind of my first introduction in using it. And I used it almost immediately. I started thinking about it. You know, I was like everybody playing around with it and was amazed by what it could do, but started very quickly thinking about how it would impact the work that we do. So a lot of the work that we do is in helping people connect to jobs and in career coaching, career counseling, career guidance, and so on. And so really became very fascinated and interested in the implications of this tool on how we could actually properly train tools, but create tools that could help people navigate their careers more quickly and effectively. How we could train datas, and there's something called retrieval augmented generation, where you can constrain large language models to certain content, and how we could actually train that content to help people in their career search, in looking for jobs, in connecting to employment. Because we also believe that one of the societal implications of generative AI is its potential for labor market disruption. So for me, one of the first things to think about was how could we actually use the tool to also help address maybe some of this disruption that it's actually causing, but how do we make sure we do it in a way that's responsible, that we're ensuring that we're not creating a bias situation, etc. So that was kind of my history in getting really excited and interested. And since then, I've been doing a kind of deep dive every day, and I set time aside to read about, listen to podcasts, and really keep abreast of what's happening, because it is happening and changing so quickly. What do you think about, another question, what do you think about children using their home task using AI? What is the future effects for our next generation? So yeah, these are really interesting questions, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but I'm happy to kind of give my opinion. I think this generative AI is going to be part of our future. You'll hear a lot of pushback from teachers and professors and others that have kind of worry about kind of the use of generative AI in kind of schoolwork, etc. But I think with proper pedagogy and design and so on, I think there's a real opportunity to use generative AI. If there are any students on the call, I would really encourage you to make sure you're looking at the not only your institution, so whether it's your school or your high school or your school board, look at what are the rules for use of generative AI at your institution, your university or college, but also in the course. So I think it's really important to respect the professors and the university or college rules, and that's critical. But I think we've seen a lot of professors and teachers really engaging it. An example in high school is even teachers being able to customize the lesson plan. So they know they want to teach, these 4 concepts today, but they could actually create a whole new custom lesson plan that they never would have had the time, based on maybe the soccer game or the hockey game that happened, or basketball game that happened last night. They're able to bring the tools to make it a lot more relevant. So I think we're going to see a lot of both positive and negative implications. The longer term implications of on children, I'm not an expert in this area, but I think it's certainly something we need to be paying attention to and thinking of, just like we have done with other ways of technology like social media, screen time, other things. There are absolutely going to be implications, but I think we do need to be thinking about ensuring that our youth are trained in these tools and learning about the benefits and also the challenges of them. So next question, according to humanity concern and the various bias risks you mentioned, do you think AI is definitely a good thing for our economy, society in general? Again, another really good question. So if you're actually even to talk to technologists, so leading thinkers, leading technologies, the people actually building these tools. On one side, you'll have this group called accelerationists, where they're basically saying we need to go fast and break things and develop technology and deploy it as fast as we can. And on the other hand, you have a whole group of actual technologists. So this is not people that are against technology that are also saying that we need to slow down, that things are moving too quickly, that governance and oversight and the unintended consequences of this technology are not yet known. We need to develop more cautiously. And that is actually a real battle that is raging right now, even in the people that are deeply involved in this. So, you know, some of the leading thinkers and leading developers of generative AI, a lot of the technology has its roots and was developed in institutions in Canada. A lot of the leaders, and some of those leaders have in technology that have actually been in developing this, have asked for a slowdown. There's been, you know, letters written and so on, but you know, there's probably an equal mix on both sides of that debate. Personally, I do get excited about the, you know, the implications, the potential for the technology to solve some of our biggest societal challenges as we, as AI, not only generative AI, but AI applications become stronger and more effective. But also we are creating more and more risk as well. And this is why I had the quote earlier on, where I think our challenge is that we have kind of Paleolithic emotions. So we're emotional beings. We still have all of those challenges that happen in human society. We also have institutions. Many of our institutions and ways of governing our society were set up, you know, hundreds of years ago, in the way we do things. And you know, if we looked at how fast a government could create new legislation, even, it would be really hard to keep up with the rate of change of some of these technologies. So I do believe, my personal opinion, if you're asking me my personal opinion, is that if I was to take one perspective around jobs, I do believe long term that we potentially will in our society create more net new jobs or more net new activities that humans can engage in and create value, even with the development of generative AI. But the challenge is going to be in what I would refer to as kind of the messy middle, the period between kind of the early stages of implementing these technologies and when they kind of work through the system. We've seen this in other major technological advancements. So if you are a historian, you go back to even the Industrial Revolution, when people moved off the farms in the cities, we developed factories and started industrializing in countries starting in like the UK and so on. There was a lot of social upheaval. There were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of issues that happened. And it's almost, I've used the analogy before, it's like cleaning your garage, or, you know, putting a new kitchen in your house. It always gets a little bit worse before it gets better. So I do believe in the longer term promise and potential, but I do think there are going to be a lot of challenges over a period of time that we are going to have to all collectively work on together. And that's kind of my personal opinion. Other people will feel differently, but that's kind of where I would come out on that. So my opinion, it will disrupt jobs. There will be many people laid off because of it. There will be challenges because of that. Longer term, it may create more net new jobs, but there will be disruption that we will see.